Give me the thumb. Alrighty. Now I will say one more thing on that. When it was needed all through high school, middle school, I was not a morning person, but I'm a little biased with breakfast clubs because the club that sponsored my youth exchange, my Interact club, and really helped me with my Rotary club is a breakfast club. And I was like, wow, everyone here is smiling and very happy. Why am I not? And they finally transitioned over. So very happy to be here in front of your breakfast club. Everyone seems to be just as lively. I want to start off by thanking you all for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Rotary Youth Programs, and I will try and fly through this in respect to your time. So if you have any questions afterwards, I will hang around. Now, the goal of this is to motivate your club to maybe become more involved with the youth programs, or maybe even be a little inspired by them. Now, on the surface, it's easy to see what their impact may have, but it goes so much deeper than that. Who does it affect for the most part? Now, I'll be sharing my personal experiences and telling you a few stories, and by doing this, I'm offering you my perspective. And it's your choice, of course, to see it or not. Now, this is not going to be a get out there and save the world speech as much as it's going to be a reminder that you already are. So I'm example A of the importance of the youth programs, and after this, it's your job to give me examples B, C, D, rest of the alphabet. So let's start from the beginning. When I was 13 years old, circumstance led me to my first job in a hole-in-the-wall restaurant. When we weren't busy, I would either sit and read and daydream for the most part about the future. I was a big book nerd. An average future for the most part, where I didn't have to worry about if I was going to come home and the electricity was going to be off, or if I would have water to shower with. An easy day-to-day life, more or less, without concern for anything outside of my little bubble. I never imagined anything more could be possible for me, this small little girl from Chattanooga, Tennessee. But I did carry passion on my sleeves. And it doesn't mean I never dreamt of making a difference somehow, of course, but how? So I was discouraged, like many kids are today. And when a child is discouraged, it's as if there's a barrier preventing them from seeing any type of potential in themselves. We lose that little bit of save the world in our hearts. So now, I was convinced by a friend of mine to run as the vice president for the Interact Club my junior year, and I won. That year we completed a few projects, but nothing really big, and it wasn't a very strong club overall. Now, my senior year, we were going to disband the club, but some Rotarians said, no, let's keep it going this one more year. And because of my prior experience, I was elected president. So president, did I know what that meant? Definitely not. I just knew that it was something I could put on my college resume. So now, it wasn't until I started directing our projects that I began to understand what Interact stood for, or at least just a couple things. I watched my kids get up early on a Saturday to pick up trash off the riverbanks, and then parents donated snacks and thanked us because their kids were up before 12 p.m. on a Saturday. I watched these kids dance around at carnivals sponsored to help bring books into the library. They were ecstatic, working the grill, doing face paintings, dancing with the kids. And I watched my kids discover what polio is and that it's still a problem. That's not something we talk about at all. So now, afterwards, they advocated around our school, educating other students and raising money to help in the fight to end it, of course. And I watched their faces light up because they knew they had helped make a difference in someone's life who they will probably never meet. We did a lot that year, but of course, what changed? A few Rotarians stepped up and encouraged us. They attended every single meeting, and they showed us what we can make a difference with what little we had. Red Bank High School, a Title I school, where programs do not thrive. So I fell in love with Rotary. It's an organization created to exemplify potential. And I didn't realize that when I was approached with the idea of being an exchange student, that was exactly what the Rotarians were trying to do for me, was show me I had that. Now, I can't exactly classify my younger self as timid. I mean, I've never met a stranger and I always have adored the spotlight. But there are some things that can make a poor young uncultured girl from a little small town quite terrified. So I had never left the country before, so why not leave for 10 months without seeing my friends or family? However, after each orientation, I became more and more excited. I'll always remember the day I left. I cried a lot, my mother cried a lot, and my little brother was so excited I wouldn't be around to make him cut his hair. It wasn't, it was when I was sitting at the Applebee's in the Florida airport eating my last little American greasy lunch, or breakfast for some reason, again at an Applebee's. I got a text message from Bill Nichols, a Knoxville Rotarian. Make me proud. It was very difficult the first few months. Adjusting, of course, was not meant to be easy, and I was told that over and over again. It was essentially me awkwardly walking around, gazing at everything and understanding nothing. And I was so confused because it all felt like this dream. But why was this dream so uncomfortable? So fast forward to November 13th. I received a call that an old friend of mine from Chattanooga that I went to high school with and adored had been shot dead in the street, and they were not going to have that great of a funeral for him. And now a few hours later, Paris attacks happened. Now, it was almost as if that dream had instantly turned into this state of limbo, more of a nightmare. And I remember my emotions just completely transitioned. I locked up, I was frozen, I didn't know how to feel about things. But it was the next morning, I remember seeing this on the news, there was a man who was playing the piano outside of the Bataclan. You may have heard about this, he was playing the song Imagine. But it made me angry. I did not understand why that song was appropriate, and I just could not comprehend it, and it really stuck with me. December got worse, and I had received a phone call from a father of my friend telling me that she was in the hospital, and I wanted to call it quits. So I was tired, I wanted to come back home. I sent a message to my host country, Bill Nichols and everybody, and they told me that I could come home, but to take into consideration all the work it took to get me there. Because the thing is, when I was approached with the idea of being an exchange student, I said there's no way I can do this financially. But Rotary said, we've got you. Just make us proud. So now, could I handle it? Was the big question for the most part. Could a public school handle it? I was the first outbound for that, representing the public schools of Chattanooga for this. So something clicked in my mind. I remembered who I was and what I was there for, and who I was advocating for by being there. So the thing about being an exchange student is that you learn to be brave instead of being comfortable. So now, when you are a child, your world is very small. Your world is your family, your friends, and whoever you're around off, and maybe a church group. It's when you get older and when you begin to realize things that you understand the world is this really big place. It's very diverse, and sometimes bad things happen. So now when your world gets rocked, you have two options. You can retreat back into your small little world where everything is safe and predictable, comfortable, or you have to learn to see the world for how it really is and be brave. So what is that? What makes the world so great? What does that mean? What is the world? Well, the world is people. It's us. Every person has lived a different life, has a different story to tell with their strengths and weaknesses. Now, the entire purpose of the Rotary Youth Exchange program is to send someone across the world with people whom are very different from where they grew up. So that way you can grow to love humanity and all of its diversity. You're challenged to accept other cultures, and I say challenge because it can be intimidating if that's something you've never known before. But that's what's beautiful. The other part of it is it's to be an ambassador of your country. Now, the vice chairman of the Rotary Youth Exchange programs in Italy was a school teacher, and she had asked me if I could come speak to some of her classes because they had never met an American before. So if I could come speak about the United States and Rotary. So of course I said yes, and I prepared a few photos of cheeseburgers and football teams because those are some of the things that make America great, right? And the kids loved it. They laughed, but I remember it was this little girl in the back of the room. She raised her hand to ask me a question. And she asked me something that really struck me. Because I was in the JROTC program at my school, so of course I got this question all the time. She'd ask me, are you proud to be an American? And I said, well, yes, I am. Why? And she said, no, you why? And it stumped me. I had never been asked that question before in that situation. So I thought about it, and I looked around the room at these kids from all across the world, and I realized my answer. So because my country is this one founded by immigrants of immigrants, it's this big melting pot of so many different skin colors, religions, languages, and we're working hard to embrace that and cherish that. I carried on to my next point, and I explained that's also one of the purposes of Rotarians. I mean, is that not? To show the beauty that lies in diversity, to encourage people to cherish cultural differences. That's why we're an international organization. That's why we have these conventions. So now this little boy from India had approached me afterwards. And I had noticed while I was speaking, he kept raising his hand, asked many questions, very involved, and some of the other kids would snicker about it. But I didn't think too much into it. And he explained to me that his family had to move for circumstance, but they still carry their cultural heritage. And sometimes the kids at school tease him about it, such as being very involved in the classroom. Education is very important to them. And it shattered my heart. But that was right at the time he hugged my waist and looked up at me with this big smile. And he told me he couldn't wait to join Rotary to teach other kids that it's okay to be different and that diversity is amazing. So now, Tulia had told me that morning that the school is going to be closing down soon. You see, in Italian, they called it what was essentially castaway kindergarten, is the translation, because it was filled with troubled kids, kids with disabilities, and foreigners. Now, the stigma about the school, the way people made it sound to me when describing it had made me a little afraid to go there. But the energy they had when someone told them the different opportunities they had to make a difference in the community and the world around them, they were just discouraged kids. So afterwards, I went to a park for lunch, and I felt like sitting in peace instead of eating, but I started to think a little bit. And I had remembered that I brought along my journal. So before this, I had not journaled anything. This was 3/4 of the way through my exchange. But I finally decided the day was when I wanted to say something. So a show of hands before I do this, who are my gardeners in here? Who says that those little yellow flowers are weeds, and who calls them dandelions? Who says weeds? They're my gardeners, okay. We're gonna try and change that. You were sitting in San Paulo Parco. You just finished talking to the kids at that school that may be closed. They were sweet, so sweet. You were sitting by the water, and the fields around you are just dirt, but will soon hold flowers just like the ones on your dress. The mountains are in front of you, with houses carved into them. I can't remember the name of the yellow flowers I used to pick for my mom, but I remember that I could never understand why people would think of them as weeds. I think maybe some people see others as that, weeds. They don't see how beautiful they really are. And that's how people see the kids in that castaway school, as just weeds and not beautiful flowers. It breaks my heart, but I'm so happy I can see the world for how it truly is, full of beautiful people and flowers, and never any weeds. One of our most famous and my personal favorite American authors, Mr. Ralph Waldo Emerson, tells us through his poetry that all the world is a metaphor. And he tells us in his book, Nature, that adults have lost their ability to see the world's metaphors. We grow up, and we lose our childish, poetic hearts. The things that happen in our lives, they harden them, and they create these dark clouds that follow us around. And someday it seems like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. When this happens, the world isn't really this big, beautiful place, is it? Maybe discouraged adults? So why am I telling you this? To remind you that there is still work to be done, there is still lives to change, and there is still room to grow. So Rotarians, you are sitting here today because you are brave enough to see the rawest parts of the world and say, we can fix that. Because after the tragedy, you say, how can we help? Because you want peace. Because you can see the world for how it truly is. There was a song that I mentioned earlier, and I didn't understand the importance of it at the time, but I think it fits well when describing who we are and where we stand in this world, and I think it fit well that morning after the attacks. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Someday I hope you'll join us, and the world will be as one. So I became depressed during my exchange because my mind was so clouded by the bad in the world, but I beat it because I learned the truth which is the platform for this organization. Even on the darkest days, there will always be light. Even when the world seems to be this terrible place, it is not. And even when the bad seems to outweigh the good, it does not. There will always be more good because there will always be people, and where there are people, there is humanity. This is what you learn as a Rotary Youth Exchange student, to love humanity. When we are stripped of everything, it is all we have left. It does not discriminate. It isn't prejudice. It isn't sexist. It's what unites us all. It doesn't matter who you are or what country you come from. Now, can we talk about the theme last year under Mr. John Germ? The Rotary Youth programs are more than meets the eye. Not only do they grant the opportunity to help out in the community or spend time out of the country, but they grant the opportunity to advocate for peace. They learn about these other countries, these other cultures. They encourage an open mind, and they encourage. So I asked earlier, who do they affect? Every single person that comes into contact with us, from the kids I taught, my host parents, my friends, to all of you today. And this is why these youth programs are so important. Because today I'm strong, I have more ambition, I'm an advocate for peace, and a child of the world. So to finish off, I would like to make my purpose clear, and these apply on a local and a global scale. The first steps to peace begin with international understanding and with the children. Maybe with discouraged children, as I grouped myself with earlier in the speech, with children whose possibilities are limited, like mine. I think it's our job to make them limitless. Children who maybe don't have the foundations at home to say, make me proud. Or you can make a difference. So it's our job to invest in the youth. We can do that through these programs and give them a future where we can look forward to, a future where our actions and bravery have made a difference. Because listen, we will make a difference. We already have. When we started the polio project in 1985 as 122 countries, what are we down to today? Nigeria for another year. So that's the thing about this. The greatest gift you can give someone is an opportunity. All of us are craving a purpose. So help show us that we have a purpose making this world a better place. So I'm speaking to all of you today, you aunts, uncles, grandparents, mothers, sisters of potential youth exchangers, of interactors, or Rotaractors. It starts with you, and it will carry on with us, because we are all dandelions, and we're not weeds. Thank you.